Okay, let's go ahead and discuss transferring our image with a graphite transfer paper. I don't have any paper available, and I would probably make my own anyway. It's a real simple process, and I would suggest that you get an extra copy that you don't have to use. You want to have a paper that you can actually get the pencil to go on and adhere to, and so a slick glossy paper is not going to work. And I would go ahead and take my image, and naturally I'm going to have to pay attention to where the image is. If you had a light table it would be helpful, or a light box. But I would take my softest pencil, and that's going to be our 4B. And I would go ahead and use the side now. This is your opportunity to go ahead and use the side of your pencil, which I tell you not to use unless there's an occasional technique that we need. But now I would go ahead and I would get quite a bit of graphite on here. Come out to the edges where you know you're going to want to capture the picture. And the more lead on here, the less you would have to press. Doesn't have to be pretty, just have pretty good coverage here. Now let's get our paper back here, and let's go ahead and place it. We might want to find the center, that's fine, but basically what I want to do is demonstrate how it transfers. Let's go ahead and get it in the middle left and right. In this case, because she's such a symmetrical subject, if she was turning to the right or to the left, we'd want to probably create a little bit more space in the area she's looking into. So I would probably ever so slightly move it to the right if she was looking to the left, and so on. So let's go ahead and put a little higher on the page like we were talking about. And this gives us an opportunity, because this is the size we're going to work, obviously, an idea to really get a good idea of where we want it for placement on the paper. So now, when I've decided that, I want to be able to make sure that I tape it down. And you want to use a tape where you're not going to, when you take it off, you're not going to damage your paper. Although I've given you a couple ideas about how to remove tape in some of the early demonstrations. You want to make sure that you're using something that doesn't have such an adhesive that it rips off that top surface. But on the other hand too, any tape you would use, I would like you to take into consideration that you're going to start with one corner and pull it away from the middle. First of all, be very patient when you pull it off. I see people just thinking, well, it's like a Band-Aid, I'll just do it as quick as I can, and this can really cause problems. So now I'm going to be very careful as I come across here and pull it away. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and have it stationary on here, because once you start drawing, you're never going to get it back on track. And I want to be able to have it loose on here so that I can check and see what I'm doing. I may have to press a little harder, or I don't have to press as much. I wouldn't press any more than I have to, but it's probably going to be a firm, touch of the pencil. I'm going to get my 4H pencil because it's harder. If you have a stylus or something like that that you can use, that's fine. Just make sure, again, that you don't lose that sensitivity of how much pressure you're putting on. I want to put only as much pressure as I need to go ahead and transfer this. So let's go ahead and start out with certain things that are always important to me are the eyes. So I like to start in the middle and work out. So I'm going to go ahead and press on here. And I can go ahead and give a little bit of an idea about where my eyelashes are, but don't try and get too carried away. And then you can see it transferring. Now, I'm not real happy with the amount of value I have on here, and I think I'm going to put a little more. Okay. Now let's go back to this. And see, now that I put this back down, I can go right back to drawing, and then I don't have to worry about the marks where I made before. You could keep reinforcing that backside if you want to. If you feel like there's places that aren't picking up. And now I'm going to come in here and hopefully leave a good mark. I'm going to just represent that reflection as a round shape. Primarily, that's what I would suggest you use for right now anyway. You can get too hung up with, well, the picture says this, but some things just aren't that necessary unless your whole point is to, do an eye and show the reflections, and that's, half of what you're trying to accomplish. I just don't think it's really always that effective and can be a distraction. Put a few of these so I know here's some of these little folds and wrinkles underneath that add to the proportion and the character of the individual. And let's see if it's transferring now. Yeah, it is. So you can see what's going to happen here. I can, again, have as much as I want. I can come over here and I can just say, okay, I just want this, and I just want that, and I want where it meets the eye. Anything you desire, you can go ahead and make it as challenging for yourself as you want. But at the very least, it's going to establish the size without you having to guess and do a bunch of calculations and, all this conversion and everything else. If you're not careful, there's some things that I want you to be careful about here, and if you're not careful, you won't have the advantage you think you're having anyway. And this, along with some of the other methods, there's little things that I want you to notice. I am coming in here and not drawing in the white. I'm drawing in the dark. So as a general rule, right away I'm going to break that rule here because there's a couple exceptions. But I draw on the dark side of a line. If I have an eye, I'm going to put my pencil in the iris, the dark part. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in the pupil in the darkest part. Every time, pick out the darkest area. Otherwise, if I try to go outside everything, which seems like it's a big, if you don't think about it, it's something that happens often, then I'm going to end up by coming out to meet my line, and if I put it in the white, now that means that the iris got a little bigger and the white got smaller. Until in some pictures, the white is almost non-existent. And then you forget about that and you're drawing away, and you end up by having something that is, starting to be distorted or the wrong proportions or whatever. So keep the tip of your pencil in the dark. Now, obviously, out here, that's going to be the exception. And I do want to create, just like with the template lid that we did the sphere with, naturally I've created a line that I'm going to come out and meet, and it's very light, but I don't want it to be any darker than it's going to take to come out there and see it and meet it. I don't want it to dictate how much value I'm going to have to put in to make it go away. So when you're on this very light part, you want to be able to come now within her image in the light part. And that is now going to become absorbed into the value I'm going to use for her ear. I'm not going to want to come out on the outside, because I think if you can understand what I'm talking about, I'm going to have to come out with my value to meet that line, and now her ear got a little bigger. And it may not be that big of a thing to you, but accumulatively, we're going to end up with big problems. So I'm going to go on the dark side of that side of the face, and now over here I'm going to come on the inside, because now I have to go ahead and show that I know where the edge of this face is. So I'll act like it's dark, because I'm not going to do the background. I'm just going to do white in the background. It's one of the things that I enjoy doing in many of my portraits anyway, because it brings more focus to the face. And doesn't become a distraction in itself. I'll talk more about that later, though. Let's see if this is transferring now. See what we've got. Look at that. This is plenty for you to work with, and you can see where you can put as much or as little as you possibly want, and have as much challenge as you possibly need. It's really not a bad way. If you want to lay out your picture, you could do that, or get as much detail as you want. But it's one more option for some of you who aren't advanced enough or feel you have the capability or the control to be able to do a freehand drawing. This is a great option for you to get something on the paper. And I think you probably all are familiar with what I've said about, hey, let's start out with baby steps first. So if this gets you started, I think it's a wonderful thing for you to do. It's in your comfort zone. It's not so hard that you start wondering about, wow, I don't even know how to work the tools yet. I'm trying to get my technique down, let alone do all this. I would keep track, kind of get used to how you would show a highlight. Sometimes you might want to show it like a topo map. Maybe a couple different places where you might show that there's a gradation going on for a contour. But you don't want to make it so confusing that you can't interpret your picture when you go back to start drawing. But I do like to go ahead and designate highlights so I know where I'm pulling to, with just like on the sphere. I'm coming from darker to lighter, and I want to know where to fade it away so that there's a definite form that's there for a reason. It's the high point, the apex, and I want to be able to clearly see that. There's even a couple little teeth in here. Teeny little things. Now you could decide to just leave those out, but I'm going to indicate them so I can make that decision later. Real challenge in trying to get something like that to really read well so that it can be an effective part of your picture. And I want this to be irregular. There's nothing like having a severe outline to lips, and we'll talk about that also. There's no real defined edge on a lip unless you get lipstick out and you start trying to really do something with impact. I'm going to go ahead and put a few highlights in here so I have another reference point. There's still going to be the opportunity for us to use these other tools that I mentioned before we got started. And even though we're using this method to get something on the paper initially. Where does the chin start? Let's get the little lips in here. Anything you can see that you want to capture, if that's what you're trying to do, if you're trying to get as much information as you can, you still have to interpret it. So it's still going to be quite a challenge. I don't care. You could have everybody draw with a projector. It doesn't mean their picture is going to be successful. And this is one reason why I want to go through some of these things, because I want to show you some of the pitfalls as much as the advantage. Because if you go in here with the idea that this answers all your questions, and now you're home free, forget it. I know all kinds of people that have a projector that it doesn't make any difference on the outcome. You still have to know what to do with it then. But a lot of you have a number of methods, and maybe some of you have used this, and if you haven't, maybe this will be something you'd like to be able to think about to at least get something started. I'm not going to do too much with the hair. If I have a good reference point, I want to try to capture that. Like there's a little sharper V, there's a little darker color. I might try to capture that. But again, I don't want to take the freedom I have with creating my hair. I want to get a sense of the direction, so there's nothing wrong with doing some of this. Because we're going to come in with a lot freer approach. If you've seen the hair demonstration. You've heard me talk about it before. It's one of the places that you don't have to worry about being nearly as exact. And it's kind of fun, I think. I'd like you to come to the place where you're coming to the hair and you're saying, oh, wow, I get to relax a little bit. I don't have to be so tedious. But for whatever reason, because people don't know how to do hair, often it is one of the scariest things for people to draw. And I want to take some of that apprehension out as we go through these lessons on how to do your portrait. I think we got the ear already. So let's get some of this inner structure here. Great. Let's go ahead and get the clothes are a little more forgiving too. The only reason I'd be exact about some things that don't seem that important is because it gives you something that's a constant or something you can count on for a reference point to make sure in measuring something else you've got something to play off of. And surprisingly enough, some of these things might even help you in the construction of a face if you know that they're accurate. And, you know, you don't want to get carried away with detail. I am really interested in detail. I'm probably obsessed with detail, but I had to come to the realization that some detail is not necessary. But every once in a while it adds a little character. So you can see the stitching on here, and it might be something interesting. So if you didn't want to have to measure everything out, you could come in here and make your dots, just to show the incremental, you know, aspects of the stitching. You could make the loops if you want. You know, anything that's going to help remind you or help you now have an opportunity to interpret some basic lines. And you could even run a line through part of it to show the row. But anyway, you could do it all different kinds of ways. See, I'm interpreting this a little bit different than I did the other. Instead of making dots within that line. And it's kind of fun. It's a good challenge. If you decide you want to do little details like this in your drawing, again, I would encourage you not to make too much out of it if it's something that is going to be a distraction. But sometimes it's kind of fun to have a little challenge and just see, you know what, if I wanted to, could I make it look like that? Because otherwise there's nothing wrong. There's nothing like having the desire to draw something and you don't have a clue if it's going to come out okay. So it's nice to practice and see what you can do. Once you commit yourself, you don't want to have drawn too hard. You might be able to get it off. There's some direction of some of this here. If you wanted to see the texture and the material like that, you know, there's folds that might be, you know, interesting. And then you want to pay attention to the curve of the material as it goes in these contours. So you can get a little bit of an indication on a few of those. You know, you can get as much information as you want. And I would not come down here and end everything in a straight line like a photograph has. In fact, I didn't even get enough down there to really make that much difference. But I would go ahead and vary the edge. I wouldn't go ahead and have everything come down right to the edge of a photograph. And so it looks like you just tried to copy a photograph. I'd like to have a little more natural edge than that. I guess, did we do this ear over here? Yes, we did, except for this part. And see, I can peek back there and just fill in a gap that I didn't do because it's taped down. Hairlines, at least get something established so you know where. Maybe a little contour, the temple, you know, anything you decide you want to do. I don't want to cause indentations though, where I'm going to have that influence my pencil drawing later as I go across all these little grooves and ditches. But the direction, so that later on you can come in with your 2B, which is the hair pencil, and have a little more freedom of stroke. This stuff will get covered up very easy, and you don't have to guess or maybe have drawn and hope you had gone a different direction. You can just go in there and have some freedom. It's too bad that people get really worried when they do the hair. There's nothing like anxiety and being nervous to keep you from doing what I want you to do, is have all the flow and grace you possibly can have in your drawings. All right, I didn't put this applique on here just for the sake of demonstration though. That gave us a great layout, and I think this is something that you could consider utilizing. It's really quite good. You can still erase this, very well, because it's just laid on the surface. If I haven't really tried too hard and pressed too hard. So pay attention. Is it dark enough? You can, if it's too dark, you can go ahead and back off under pressure. If you need a little more graphite, you can add that on there and have some opportunity to make a few adjustments as you go. But that's basically a transfer method.